evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 9th, 2017 regular meeting of the Town Board of the Town of Ossining. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, I'm so sorry. Could you please remain standing for a moment? Last week we received news that the great aunt of Victoria Caffarelli, who works in my office, passed away suddenly during a vacation out of state. The what? Great aunt. Maria Michelle Caffarelli, a lifelong resident of Ossining, send our best wishes and condolences to her family and all those in the community touched by this tragic loss. Please join me in a moment of silence for Maria. Thank you.
Councilmember Tory?
Here.
Councilmember Jeffrey?
Present.
Councilmember Wilshire?
Present.
Councilmember Feldman?
Here.
And Supervisor Lunenburg.
Here.
This evening we have public hearings in the matter of introductory local law number 5 of 2017 extending a moratorium on construction within the town of Ossining. If you have come to address the board, kindly give your name and your residential address.
So just before we get started, I just wanted to mention that we've been working with our planning consultants to take a look at zoning in several parts of the unincorporated area, and we're not quite ready to adopt those zoning changes. So we are looking to extend the moratorium for another 3 months until August 7th to give us time to finish the zoning law, although it is likely we will lift it earlier if we are finished. If there are no objections, we plan to adopt the law allowing this extension later in tonight's meeting.
Is there anyone who's come to address the board?
This is just on the extending the moratorium.
Jamie Black, 35 Quaker Bridge Road. Thank you for your consideration and creating an extension for the moratorium. It just shows that the board is sensitized to the fact that there are a tremendous number of issues that need to be looked at very, very carefully, and I respect your judgment in extending it another 90 days. Thank you.
Anyone else? Are we going to adjourn this public
We
hearing?
are going to adjourn this public hearing.
Close it.
I thought you were closing.
Closing, I'm sorry, closing this public hearing.
Okay,
You
that's
have
Yes.
to vote to.
Okay, so can I have a motion to close the public hearing? We're just closing the public hearing to extend the moratorium so that later on this evening we can vote to extend the moratorium. Okay?
They need to come.
You need to come to the microphone.
Maria Caroli, One Cliff Drive, Crotonville, Ossining, New York. I just have a question. You said that your decision about the moratorium may be completed earlier than 3 months. Will we be notified about that?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Our next public hearing is the 2017 cabaret license renewal for the Westchester Ballroom.
So just to let you know that if you've been following along, we've asked the applicant to undergo some sound testing based on some concerns that we have heard from residents in the neighborhood. We had our consulting engineer, Dan Ciarcio with us this evening, or we will in a few minutes, who will discuss his findings and suggested next steps.
I think I also should state that I have recused myself from any voting with respect to decision making on this application because I am an affected party by the fact that I live near this establishment.
So now we can recognize anybody who's come to address the board about the public hearing. Please say your name and.
I'm Barbara Antiste. I own the Westchester Ballroom. I thought the engineer, is he supposed to be here?
He just walked in.
Oh, good. Oh, good. I was waiting for you. So the civil engineer came to the studio and did a sound study.
It's okay. You can just, you want to continue saying whatever you want.
So he came to the studio, he did a sound study. He didn't find that we were doing anything that was not legal or intrusive. And his recommendation, as I understand, he's making a report, was that if and when the cops were called, that he would come down to the studio and see what was going on.
Okay. Is that all you have to say?
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Mr. Ciarcia, who's our town engineer, if you would come up and just let us know briefly what your findings were and your recommendations.
Okay. All right, well, I did get out to the facility on 2 occasions. The first one, first time I went out there, I went unannounced. It was a Friday evening in April, I guess it was April 7th. So I went out about 9 o'clock. There was an event happening. I guess according to their website, the event was billed as the April Showers Mixed Ballroom Dance was what was happening that evening. I had a sound meter outside the building. I took readings at the property line and outside the building, and for the most part, the readings were barely above ambient levels. So I was looking at that, and I also looked at, in terms of enforcement and how our code reads, that after 10 o'clock, I believe things are, the sound level that's permitted is 50 decibels. When I went out there, I measured 48, but that evening at the property line, the music was barely audible. So I couldn't see that particular evening being disruptive to the neighbors. Just another aside on the code actually does say that you can, the sound level gets reduced by 5 decibels if you're using sound producing devices. So in the case of the ballroom, a sound system would be a sound producing device. So one of the issues, I guess, from an enforcement perspective, we would have to figure out, and simply then my read of the code would be then the enforcement level would be 45 decibels, but the problem is the ambient sound level, or at least with the equipment we utilize, the ambient sound level is above what would be a violation of the town code. So that, from an enforcement perspective, that's something we're going to have to kick around and resolve. I did meet with the owner and an architect representing the owner. We went to the facility. We turned up the house system, which is a pedestal mount PA system that has an integral amplifier in the speakers. I did not see any sort of subwoofer, earth moving kind of equipment in there. We cranked it up. I went outside to take readings, and it was barely audible. So it seems to be one of the things is in trying to resolve this thing and come to a solution. I guess I haven't been there when there's an actual problem. I mean, obviously, I guess there was a problem this past weekend, and it begs the question as to whether the house system, which I cranked up to see if I could hear outside, was in fact the same equipment that was being utilized this past weekend, or was it different equipment capable of getting the low down bass tones, which tend to carry, and the kind of, those low frequency things are the kind of things that can annoy you. As far as, in the absence of knowing what's causing the problem, well, there were two issues we observed. One was there is a fire exit that goes out to the parking lot area, which, if that door was open, would direct more sound toward the residences. One of the suggestions to the owner was to install panic hardware on that with an alarm so that patrons of the facility would not think it was a good idea to use that door to go out and have a cigarette, get a breath of fresh air or whatever. That door should really remain closed during all events. The other possibility, and again, I can't say in that we weren't at a high decibel level where I could go around and scan the perimeter of the building and try and figure out where the problem was originating. But one of the things is there's a metal roll-up door, which also may be transmitting sound that could get some sound insulation on it. And, and just in general, it's a metal prefab building, which has probably fiberglass insulation bats surrounding it, which will deaden the sound to some extent, but not to the level that actual sound attenuation insulation could achieve. So that's what I observed, and I can report to you. Otherwise, not actually having observed the problem on one of these evenings, it's kind of hard to really get to the bottom of what's causing the problem.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Could we hear from our Officer Damiano just about, because there've been a number of police reports, and if we could just hear some of the couple of the highlights from those to see if we can identify what the complaints have been and what was determined, and then talk a little bit more.
Lieutenant Rich Damiano, Village of Ossining Police. We had 6 complaints, formal complaints since January 1st, 3 this past weekend. Most of the problem, what this gentleman said, is correct, but it's the opening and the shutting of the back door that allows the admittance of the loud noise. When everything is shut, my officers found it unfounded, but when the doors are open, they do hear it. And they did respond to 2 complainants' residents, and they did hear it when, not all the time, but when the door was open, they did hear the loud bass and the music.
Okay, so when they heard it, were they outside the facility, or were they actually at the residences? Like,
They
where?
went to the residence.
The residences. Okay, so that's where you can hear it from,
Well, you can hear it outside the facility, of course, but
when the door's
we
open.
want to see when the door's open. When the
Okay.
doors are shut, it's fine.
Okay, so it's mostly when the door is open. That seems to be the bulk of the problem. Okay, thank you. So Ms. Antes, we can hear from the public, but I wanted to let me just ask one more question, if you could just come back up. So when we met back in, I can't remember which month we had you before us, we had suggested that you take the time and to actually put some things in place to reduce the sound. Can you tell us what you've done since that time?
We had discussed putting sheetrock behind the garage door, but then I was waiting for the report from the civil engineer, so we didn't do the sheetrocking. But we do not have subwoofers. The sound system that he heard the day he came was the same sound system we use all the time. It's a sound system that was there this weekend. The police, they came in twice on Saturday. The party started at 9. They came in a few minutes after that, maybe 9:15 or so. And that's what they said, that they didn't think it sounded loud out in the parking lot. And
You know you don't have a cabaret license right now.
yes, I
You're
understand that.
not
But
supposed
we
to
play
be
our own
operating-
music.
But you're not supposed to be operating and having parties from 9 p.m. till 1 in the morning. So,
Well, my understanding was I just wasn't allowed to bring in music from the outside or live bands or live music, but we could play our own music.
no.
We play music every night of the week. There's music going on over there now.
Well, something must be different when you're having these parties, because they're
Well, obviously the
different
music
situ-
is louder when we have a party than when we have dance classes.
Okay,
We have a tango party tonight, and he's playing tango music. I mean, the tango teacher.
well, that, I mean, that falls under your cabaret license that you haven't been issued yet. So you're operating outside of what's permitted. by the
Well,
town.
I
haven't
didn't
given
understand.
you
My
the okay
understanding
to
was I
get
wasn't
the-
supposed to bring in outside music.
No, that's not correct, because there's a noise ordinance, and there's also, there's specific, code that says that you're not supposed to be operating those kinds of events in, without such a license.
Well, as I said, this is the first time that I have understood this. I didn't understand. Then I'm out of business.
Unless you put in the recommended things to dampen the sound so that you're not disturbing the neighbors.
Which I was willing to do, but then the civil engineer came and gave us this report and said he didn't see that was necessary.
We asked you to bring in a sound engineer of your own.
We did that also.
And what happened from those?
That was before
those
he
folks?
even came. That was way before. And he said he
But
gave
did
us
you
a
put-
decibel level, and it was never even determined that we had reached that decibel level outside.
So you didn't put in any sound dampening.
No, we haven't put in any
Anything.
more insulation
You
or
haven't
sound
done
dampening.
anything about keeping the back door closed.
Oh yeah, the back door. The only nobody goes out the back door except when people are first arriving. I have a few disabled people and handicapped people that use the back door because they can't come up the front steps. So that's the only time we actually use the back door is for handicapped access.
So Saturday night, we received complaints. I heard that there were complaints basically from 9 till 1 in the morning, and the cabaret license doesn't even extend till 1 in the morning, so you're not supposed to be operating that late. So, I'm trying to figure out what it is that you were doing, if the door was open when the officers.
People were probably leaving. I mean, the party was actually over at 12:30. People were leaving maybe out the back door at that time. They might be leaving.
At this point, it seems like we're not gonna be able to grant you the cabaret license unless you can put in and show us that you've actually put in specific, word.
Remediation.
What? Mitigation, thank you, mitigation, to make sure that these, you're not gonna be disturbing your neighbors, when you have amplified music
Mhm.
that is beyond, and a lot of people. Because if you continue to have that without putting those things in effect, then you're not being a good neighbor. My suggestion is to meet with your neighbors, to go out when you're having your tango party and you're blasting your music, and go over to their property and stand there and hear what they're hearing in the middle of the night when they're trying to sleep, so that you can have a better sense of what it is that you need to do to stop that. If you don't do that, then we're not going to be able to issue you your license, and then we really don't want you to be out of business. We'd like you to be in business, but we'd like you to be a good neighbor. I think that we said that pretty clearly the last time as well. So, we have a member of our planning board who's a neighbor. There's a member of our town board who's a neighbor. There's other folks who have voiced their discontent with what happens late at night when you have these big parties. And we'd really like you to be able to continue to do that, but we'd like you to be able to work with us so that you put something in place. We think that panic bar on the back door would be helpful, and some kind of insulation on that metal door that seems to be part of the problem that's carrying sound, and show us that you've done it. We'll give you 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thanks.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
There are parties happening now, though, so the difference between a dance lesson and the assemblage of people assembling for a party, I believe, is where the code for the cabaret license would trigger. So
Slippery slope. It's probably somewhere in between, and it might be that they shouldn't be having these dance lessons at all, but the real issue is when they have these assemblages.
So are they, I think we need to be clear that those can't commence until
Correct.
there's a cabaret
I-
license in
absolutely.
place. So if there's something going on tonight, or if you have plans for the weekends, those events really do fall under the necessity of having a cabaret license.
Okay.
Okay? Okay. Do you have any suggestions over here?
Well, it's a public hearing, so I think you need to hear from
We
the
need to
public.
continue to hear from the public, yeah.
Good evening. Mark Hoflick, 98B Morningside Drive, member of the Planning Board of the Town of Ossining. I have lived at this property for 19 years. When this building was first constructed, it was prior to me living in this property. But the building was designed as a warehouse. I have not been inside it. I've only gone up to the front door and looked inside. But the entire exterior, 90% of it is metal, 10% of it is brick. The door that they're talking about on the side is 21 square feet. The garage door is approximately 15 by 15, 225 square feet. And it's a metal roll down garage door. The windows on that same side, there are 4 of them, I think are single pane windows. On the North State Road side, they are approximately this, I forgot how many, I'd have to look at the photos. Windows also. On the back of the space building, there are no windows over there. I'm an architect. I work in Manhattan. I do mostly corporate type projects. I do a lot of sound studios. I've done CNBC, NBC, where sound penetration going from floor to floor, building to building, through glass windows, outside noise, inside noise, when they're broadcasting. It's very important. I've even done a basketball court on a second floor of a property where the building lobby was. So sound deadening devices are out there. I brought in 4 samples. I'm trying to help this Barbara out. Number 1, Armstrong ceiling tile. If you look at this ceiling tile, you'll see it's fiberglass. They also make these where it's double. If you look at the ceiling in that space, and again, I have not been inside it, there's no insulation on the ceiling. This has an NRC value of 0.95. The thicker one has a higher NRC value, and that should reduce some of the noise. This product to install, New York prices is probably around $10 a square foot. Acoustical Surfaces, Inc. This is almost like wool, but this is also insulation. Very flexible. This also has an NRC value of even higher than that. Also very inexpensive. This could be put on the walls. I'll get to the walls in a second. We put in the ceiling. Now, when you're designing an acoustic wall in there, right now you have metal. You have maybe a little bit of insulation, and the insulation they put in is really an R value for a property that was built as a warehouse. Then you might have gypsum board on the inside and or mirrors, which I've seen a bunch of mirrors, and or some other product. There's no sound barrier. So when you take a metal cladding on the exterior of a building, you take the sound bad insulation and then the gypsum board, there's no air baffle. So the way we design things, the way acoustical engineers design things is you have the metal cladding, put some insulation, a barrier of air, then another second barrier of insulation, then the gypsum board. So the air goes in and out, in and out, and stops. Ceilings. There's also Acoustical Surfaces, makes a product with the same type of insulation, but it's got a fabric on it. This can be used in a few different manners. It can be used as baffles, vertical inside on the ceiling going across, which stops the sound of the music from vibrating all the way across. Also inexpensive. tectum ceiling. It looks like,
I'm just gonna ask you, you know, this is very technical.
yes.
And probably would be better served if we had it all in writing. I know that you did send something in writing, and maybe we can share that with Ms. Antes. And okay, right. But but still, you know, even if you don't own the building, if you're leasing the space and you want to have the benefit of continuing to operate as you do, then you're going to have to continue. You're going to have to make some sorts of changes. And these are excellent suggestions, but we have a very large audience tonight. I'm going to limit everybody's comments to 3 minutes. I haven't mentioned that prior to, but I think you're already well beyond that. So if you could maybe just wrap it up and we can put the rest.
This one has an NRC value of 80.85. So the building, the way it's designed right now, it's a warehouse. It has no insulation. The sound pops out. This past weekend, we called at 10:30 and I think at 1 o'clock. The police officer said that they've only gotten 6 complaints since January 1st. I know that we have called more than that. So I think there's a discrepancy there. They also serve alcohol in this space, and the noise and stuff like that. So it's pretty disruptive at night. The metal doors it's the fire door, 21 square feet is nothing. You have to excuse me. The roof, it's a metal roof. I can see into that space. We've complained numerous times, at least 20 times that I know of. Okay. Not once has the owners of the Broadway studio even made a phone call, knocked on the door, went around to any of the residents and asked for anything. Every time the police have gone in, this is real important. I want everyone to understand this. Every time the police have gone there, we've been very respectful to them and everything like that. They've gone in, they lowered the music. 5 minutes later, after they have left, they cranked up the music in violation of the code. I work with Dan on the planning board, and I also don't agree with his readings. I really think an independent acoustical engineer, someone like Sarami, needs to look at this because, again, I'm an architect. I deal with this on a daily basis.
Mhm.
I don't agree with my own colleague on what's happening in this thing. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I have other stuff to talk about.
Okay,
but
you
you
can
gave me 3
absolutely
minutes.
submit that in writing for sure. So we'll all take a look at that and add that to the record. Is there anybody else to address us on the Westchester Ballroom?
Fred Suckle, 98B Morningside Drive. I just want to make a comment. Police said that they went to the neighbors and listened from there. If you had, you would have heard the noise. So nobody came up by our house. Maybe they went up to Morningside Drive, but they didn't come to the house. As far as the engineer, he tested around the building, but he didn't test from our homes. We're not crazy. I mean, we're not making this stuff up. It's not like we don't want a business there. We're very happy to have, we just want them to cooperate and lower the noise so that we can enjoy the quality of life that we have and they can enjoy their business. All right? It's not a big thing. Insulate your building. Put up soundproofing. What's the problem with this? Why aren't you doing it? That's all I have.
Is there anybody else here to address us on the Westchester Ballroom cabaret license? So just to reiterate, we would really love it if you could reach out to the neighbors, maybe go there. Potentially, we're also going to try to, if we could get a list of when you believe you have these events, where which you can't have for the next 2 weeks, but following any mitigation that you put in, what we're going to ask you for is to give us a list of when you're having the event so we can make sure that the mitigation has actually helped to reduce the sound to the backyard, down along that whole strip. And then we'll be able to, hopefully move forward. Okay?
Supervisor, can I make a suggestion? Because
Yes,
I believe it was last August when this first came before you,
yes.
and at that time, there was an indication that you wanted to see something done about mitigating sound.
Yep.
Now May.
Yeah.
I think the board, and obviously I can't do this, I can only make a suggestion, but I think the board should direct that in 2 weeks, when they come back, there be a specific plan for mitigation of the noise. Because otherwise, we're just gonna be going in circles.
Oh, but yeah, I mean, if I'd love for them to have actually very specific and even have taken care of it in 2 weeks, if that's a possibility. I don't know how long it takes to put up insulation, but if you have an architect and you have, you can find some folks to work with, and if you need a suggestion, we can find a sound engineer for you, and direct you to that person, and you can hopefully get something up that will affect the benefit that we hope that you can achieve so that you can continue to operate.
Dana, I apologize. I'd like to know whether or not I'm permitted to visit the site and look at the interior of the site. I want to know if you can ask the applicant if I can look as an architect and as residents, because I can actually give valuable advice on how to mitigate the sound.
I think you're gonna have to work directly with the applicant on that.
That's totally up to the applicant. I mean, it's
Correct.
private property, and whether or not she allows somebody in there is our business.
Yeah. Yeah. Move to adjourn the public hearing to it's May 23rd. Motion?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Okay. Oh, you're abstaining. I don't know if you abstain, used that. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And next up, our last public hearing tonight is on the proposed zoning changes that I mentioned earlier at our last work session. Board had deliberated based on the comments we'd received to date and discussed potential decisions that we had come to conclusions specifically for the Crotonville area going forward. Subsequent to that, we did receive some recommendations from the planning board, which were alluded to at the work session, and now I am going to read into the record. Okay, so let me just get those just received comments from the planning board. Okay. So this is from Ching-Hua Chin, Chairman, and Town of Ossining Planning Board. The Planning Board hereby renders this report in accordance with Section 200-52A of the zoning law. Concerning the proposed zoning text amendments, the Planning Board finds the following. Number one, the proposed changes are consistent with the aims and principles embodied in the zoning law as to the particular districts concerned, except that the Planning Board questions whether it is appropriate to add residential uses to the neighborhood commercial zoning district, given the current enrollment to capacity relationship in the Ossining School District. Enrollment to capacity relationship. Number two, given the wide range of the proposed zoning text amendments, land in all of the zoning districts in the town will be affected by the amendments, and they will be affected in a beneficial and environmentally positive manner. However, lands will only be directly affected if development is proposed on these lands. Number three, the planning board is unaware of any indirect implications of the zoning text amendments on other regulations. Number four, the proposed zoning text amendments are generally consistent with the aims of the comprehensive plan of the town. Number five, the planning board believes that the term structural soil should be defined in the zoning law. Number six, regarding the proposed maximum floor area provision for single-family homes, the planning board believes that the town board should assure itself that it is comfortable with the definition of floor area in the zoning law as used for this purpose. Concerning the proposed amendments to the zoning map, the planning board finds the following. Number one, the planning board believes that the proposed neighborhood commercial zoning of the parcel on Stanley Avenue is appropriate, subject to comment number one above. However, the board also believes that retaining the general business EB1 zoning on the Fiorito parcel on Old Albany Post Road, and the proposed use of that parcel by its owner would be inappropriate for the area concerned because of the potentially adverse visual and community character effects of such use on the existing residential development in the area. The planning board believes that depending on the size of the Fiorito parcel, it should either be rezoned to R5 or R7.5. Given the current, number two, given the current enrollment to capacity relationship in the Ossining School District, the planning board does not believe that adequate public school facilities readily or conveniently exist or could be created to serve the needs of additional residences likely to be constructed as a result of the proposed addition of residential uses to the NB zoning district. Other public facilities and services, including roads, exist or can be created to serve the needs of any additional residences or other uses likely to be constructed as a result of the proposed zoning map changes. Number three, the planning board is unaware of any existing or proposed plans in the vicinity of the zoning map changes except for the town comprehensive plan. Number four, except for the GB1 zoning mentioned above, the planning board believes that the proposed zoning map amendments are consistent with the growth of the town as envisioned by the comprehensive plan. Number five, due to the residential uses proposed to be added to the neighborhood business zoning district, the proposed zoning map amendments will result in an increase in the total zoned residential capacity of the town, which would put additional pressure on the enrollment capacity relationship in the school district. Although not part of the zoning chapter, the proposed local law would amend the tree protection chapter of the town code as well. While the planning board fully supports the goal of tree replacement with respect to the proposed provisions regarding the replacement of regulated trees that are removed, the planning board believes that such replacement would be financially onerous for existing single-family and two-family homeowners. The planning board also believes that the proposed rate of replacement of regulated trees may be impractical, given the limited amount of private and public land available for the planting of new trees. The planning board further believes that an exception should be made for the removal of dead and dying trees. The planning board would be happy to elaborate upon any aspect of the comments above, should the town board so desire. And I received one other letter that was asked to be read into the record. Dear Supervisor Levenberg and town board members, this is from Daria Gregg, 51 Old Albany Post Road. As a Crotonville resident, I appreciate that you've taken the time to hear all the residents and their views about your proposal to rezone the current GB district in Crotonville to either neighborhood commercial or residential, or let it remain general business. Residential is the preferred rezoning option to most residents in Crotonville and is what has been proposed in the town of Ossing's master plan. However, I am a practical person and think residential zoning would be hard to implement in the future for the following reasons. One, the area is owned by at least two, possibly three owners. To coordinate in a fair manner that all the owners would discontinue their current use and tear down their buildings to build residential communities would be very difficult. Probably the buildings would remain empty for some time and possibly become a future hazard to the community. Number two, in the past, there was a gas station on the property. Currently, there is and has been a car repair shop, which now has a permit to do body work and to spray paint cars as part of this permit with toxic paints and thinners. Behind the buildings, large diesel trucks are stored. All this probably adds up to contaminated soil, which would have to be cleaned up before any residential development would be allowed. Number three, no one would build this area piecemeal. A house on part of the area next to a current commercial area would be hard to sell. Most developers would avoid this until the whole area was cleared. But on the positive side of changing to residential zoning, when the current owners choose to sell their property, it would give the town more power and leverage over any future proposals. Currently, the Corvette repair shop is painting cars inside. I can only guess the town could not stop this permit process. But just this past weekend, the fumes coming from the shop could be smelled 3 houses away. Who enforces the exhaust and safety of this operation? Next door on Stanley Avenue, there are many children living and playing and also being exposed to these fumes. If the zoning were changed, this part of the car service would not be allowed in the future. Currently, there is a business commercial district surrounded by residential. We need a solution for our community. A fair compromise in my mind would be neighborhood commercial. When one owner sells, it would be easier to transition over to this use. The neighbors would appreciate shopping or eating nearby within walking distance. Currently, there are not enough rental properties locally. If any apartments were built upstairs, they should go for a fair price and would not be Section 8, as one resident has stated. There is nothing wrong with Section 8 housing per se, no matter what the rent is. What happens to the property depends on good, reliable renters, not their financial status. This scare tactic offends me. The area surrounding the GB district is full of rental apartments, and for the most part, the renters are good neighbors. However, the previous Curtin property, currently owned by Mr. Fiorito, should definitely be zoned residential. It's hard to determine with 100% certainty why the hillside on the northeast side of the property next to Mr. Fiorito's current business has started to crumble. It's probably a combination of factors: a large tree whose roots destabilized the previous retaining wall, or Mr. Fiorito removing part of the hillside from down below to place new building, or the belt blasting down on the mountain on the Croton River side of Mr. Fiorito's property. No one can say for sure. But what better person than Mr. Fiorito to repair it? Yes, this will cost Mr. Fiorito money to repair, but it is to his advantage to protect his investment on top and below the hillside. If you allow Mr. Fiorito to build a two-family house on the property, it will still be residential in character and will be a buffer to the residents on this end of Old Albany Post Road. Mr. Fiorito will be able to recoup his investment with time. If someone is worried about residents falling down the hill, a fence would be built to make it safer. Rezoning the properties is a difficult process. However, you, the town board, are the residents of the town of Austin's representatives. I hope you'll do what is best for Crotonville and the future of our community. Please remember, each resident of Crotonville will be impacted by your decision. I hope you look to the future of Crotonville. Yours sincerely, Daria Gregg. Okay, so just wanted to reiterate that we have been at this process for a long time, and we've heard from business owners, we have heard from residents, we have been working hard to find what we think would be an appropriate solution to what the Crotonville has been, and what we hope it to be in the future. And we're happy to continue to hear from the residents tonight, and we will continue to deliberate at our work session next week.
I just want to ask, the planning board says that they would be happy to clarify, and I would like to know the appropriate process by which the town board can ask the planning board to explain whatever it is they've written.
Well, I think if there's some questions, there's a couple of ways you could do it. One is you could draft a memo back to the planning board. The other is to invite the chair to the next meeting and ask if he could be available to respond to questions that you have.
Yeah.
Maybe the more practical way.
That would be
Let's do
great.
that.
Yes.
Okay. Items of the work session. Okay, so with that, we have a lot of people in the audience, and as I would love it if people would try to limit their comments to 3 minutes, and then when we get through the first round of everybody who wants to speak, we can come back and see what time it is, and if it's a reasonable amount of time. We do have a regular meeting following this, then we'll certainly have people come back and continue, or you are always welcome to submit all your comments in writing following. And please state your name and where you live.
Hi, Jamie Black, 35 Quaker Bridge Road. I have in my hand petitions from the area residents, and they're to be submitted to the planning board, to the town board, as well as to the zoning board. And what these petitions request is the following: that all of the properties that are zoned GB1 or NC in Crotonville are to be grandfathered for their originally approved use, but that they need to be rezoned single-family home residential R7.5 now. This is why I have a major issue with what the planning board's saying in terms of us needing to pull back on how we frame our community for the good of the whole in terms of population going into the schools. Right now, if you look at what the village has identified and put in place as far as additional housing units, Harbor Square is 188 units, Avalon is 100 units. The conversion of Section 8 on Snowden's, another 250 units. The additional units that have been approved on Hawks, another 50. 588 units have been approved, and we possibly are looking at maybe 10, maybe 15 additional units in the area of Crotonville. So I find that the recommendation on the part of the planning board really doesn't take into consideration what our true needs are, and it's creating a fear tactic of, oh my God, what are we going to do about the schools? So start with that. Additionally, my phone is going off. Additionally, in terms of what else people are looking for, is they're looking for a notification. They're looking to be notified in writing by mail at least 30 days in advance of when the board is going to speak to something that is of such serious importance. Because in speaking with the residents of Crotonville, we found a number of things. One is, oh yes, I've heard of this. I don't really understand what is being put into play, or no, I didn't even know about it. So in the world of internet and everybody's connected via email, I think people are over-connected, and to use just the standard mailbox that everybody still has to put something that's this important in front of community, I think is something that's wise to recommend and wise to adhere to. Additionally, everybody is asking that the board actively engage in the issues of the Sunshine Home, the issues of the development of the Hudson Rehab Center. The amount of incremental traffic that would potentially impact the neighborhood would be significant and alarming. Additionally, our drinking water really is at risk. We sat through a meeting with Newcastle and their team, and their experts have literally no idea where this underground silver mines are. They have no idea where these big yellow blobs, which are potentially mercury, are showing up on that site. And when I spoke to Liz the other day, she said, you know, the person responsible for our water, you know, she invited him to the site. They took a look at the site, and he said, not too concerned. The thing is this, is $10 million in revenue is generated from the sale of water by the village of Ossining. You only generate 20 million more from property taxes. So it's absolutely essential for the survival of the village to continue to have a high quality water supply that supports both town, village, and other entities.
Just to let you know that that was the 3-minute mark.
Yes, so I want to submit these petitions to the boards and request that we understand how we can revisit this conversation with the planning board, because it seems as if we're being punished for the ills of the village.
Just to clarify, it wasn't me that invited our water department, Andy Teese, to look at the Sunshine property. That was done as a part of the general
Review.
look at it, yeah, the general review. But I don't think you knew about silver mines.
Donna Sharrett, 84 Morningside Drive. So I would really, I was contemplating not coming because the supervisor's email, and I saw in the Gazette, and I think it was the Gazette, and everything that you're talking about in the work session, you never even discuss what I've been asking. It's all about Crotonville, and it is a quality of life. We have an issue where I live with noise, as you know, from the ballroom. 15-foot buffer is not enough. 30-foot setback for building is not enough. So now it's been changed to 20-foot buffer, setback buffer, and the building is still 30 feet back. There's 2 properties that are for sale in North State. It's not like every single property on North State is going to be all of a sudden redeveloped. One happens to also abut my property, so I had initially asked for better setbacks, and that was tabled until the property that proposed behind me got their approval. Once they got their approval on December 15th, then I believe in January, you guys started taking up this issue. So now there is another property right next to that. It's a larger property. It's 2.5 acres. 15 feet doesn't work for the ballroom, and it won't work if there's a multifamily building that goes in there, and that's probably what's going to go in there, because that's what people are proposing. It's 2.5 acres. On the 1.5 acre property, it's a 35,000 square foot building, and they're bringing in 3,300 cubic yards of fill to raise the property 6 feet to put this big building on top of it. That's what's behind my house on a 1.5 acre property. There's a 2.5 acre property right next to it. It's got it's at least 80 foot deeper. There's plenty of room to put a 30-foot setback, so you can have not just a row of evergreens, like you can have an actual buffer. And then the building should be 50 foot back, and that would still allow a large building on that property. And I think that that needs to be thought of. You're talking about the McMansion law for residential. There needs to be a thought of how big they can put these buildings on these properties on North State. There's 2 big properties left. This is the largest. And I would appreciate if that would be considered. I also totally object to the fact that it's also in the code that there can be a parking lot 20 foot from our property line. That North State should have the parking lot, not the Morningside Drive or the Gordon Avenue side. Should not have the parking lot. The parking lot should be in the front of the building in a commercial area, not back by the residents. So I think that needs to be changed. And right now it's going from 15 feet, whoopee, to 20 feet. So it's, 5 feet. It's very insulting. I mean, I've been discussing this for 3 years, and I'm getting 5 feet, and then the building is not even being moved. It's a quality of life, and when there's a multifamily going in, or another hospital type unit, where you got ambulances and people living like in balconies and all, it's not going to be any different. Well, it will be different than the ballroom because I won't have a chance. There'll be no recourse because there's no cabaret license for those things. So I would appreciate if you would consider my remarks.
I'm Jim Levis, 35 Quaker Bridge Road. I just want to preface my statements by saying that I am totally perplexed, and I'm frankly quite disappointed in, I went to the work session, and I know I'm not hard of hearing, for the planning board, and I've been at the town board's hearing, work sessions, and the planning board members I got to speak with individually the other night and collectively. And this is before they wrote anything, but either there's some extreme duplicitousness on the side of our planning board, or there's something just is not getting communicated or written properly to you. But they were emphatically all consistently, unanimously in favor of the master plan rendering everything back to residential, and for very strong reasons. The planning board is supposed to be, and I believe, certainly the members I met with, and there was 5 of them that I at least talked with, to the person, saw the need to be much bigger picture. That the town board is too focused on this agenda of we need more commercial for more property taxes because we've got to, that it will generate more property taxes, and that in doing so it will subsidize the additional requirements for more public school facilities and budget, whatever that may be used for. I'm all in favor of education, and I'm all in favor of public education, but the whole process by which this town is reeling out of control with a need for more funds for public education is a much more fundamental issue, dealing with how the current governance is with how residential properties are used and where there's far more than one family, several families. And the landlords, or the owners of the houses, are still collecting the rents, and the value of their properties should be a completely different model. And if you don't have the right solution as to how to prove that, then maybe you should talk to other towns who have dealt with this more effectively. Finally, I request that the board revisit what is permitted for use on properties that are going to GB1 or NC in Crotonville, because especially for Crotonville. We have no sidewalks. Elizabeth was there on this past weekend when I happened to be walking around the community, and she was with one of the planning board members, and in front of that planning board member, I said to you, the planning board has told me that they have a much more global view, and then I hear what it came through in the written report. There is something so disconnected that I'm going to say to the townspeople, there's something really wrong going on. Really, really, really wrong. And I don't point my finger at any of you, any one of you. I don't know. But systemically, something is terribly wrong with the way this is going down. And we're going to be able to submit several more rounds of petitions. And this is horrific. It's a safety issue. The other night you mentioned, and I don't remember, I think it might have even been you, Dana. I don't remember which one of you, but it's on the record, as saying that residential generates a lot more traffic than commercial. Oh my goodness. There's millions of studies that'll show that that is totally upside down, that statement. Totally upside down. And Elizabeth, you were there, and we talked about how the curve is blind. Now you're going to allow for that to happen. And then I hear about how difficult it is for a neighborhood that you're in, Mark, right? That you're in as a planning board member. You recuse yourself as a planning board member, but here I've heard you deal with one metal building and a commercial use. And what you're going to say is, oh, well, you know what? It generates more taxes and they just need to be held in queue. The time is up. I understand. I think I've said enough to suggest that we're far from over in really understanding, and I implore you to rethink this issue.
Yeah.
Mark Hoflich, 98B Morningside Drive, Town of Ossining Planning Board. I heard what you said of what we talked about at our work session the other day, and I'm going to go back to the planning board. We have the next meeting, discuss the items you mentioned tonight with the chairman and our town attorney, because I don't necessarily agree with everything that I heard of what was discussed last week. That's all I'm legally probably allowed to say without talking to Kathy. So I probably overstepping my bounds, but I apologize. But without Kathy here, I can't. And without the chairman, I don't think that's what we said.
I mean, I have to assume that the planning board chair reviewed those before they were sent to our board. So we can, go back and make sure that he believes that it is reflective of what was determined that night. Thank you for your input. Did you want to say something? Or you leaned over? No. Okay. Anybody else who would like to address the board?
Supervisor Levenberg, member of the board, Bruce Fiorito, owner of 39 Old Albany Post Road. A few issues here. Number one, someone said we created this issue that I'm building this wall for. We didn't create this issue. In fact, there's a pipe from an old drain from the town that went over the rocks many, many years ago that they diverted. And if my neighbors were as sensitive as I am to my neighbors, maybe the last owner of the house wouldn't let her water and the town water run over to my property for the last 20 years. That has cost me a couple $100,000, which would take an awful long time to recoup that money. Number one, my property was bought as industrial. I wasn't even notified. You talk about notifications that when that industrial zone got changed. It's beyond me when it got changed. But it's used as that, and it can still be used as that, obviously, until it stops being used as that. I'm very sensitive to my neighbors. I appreciate their concerns, and I don't know if they appreciate my concerns for them. And I said things that I've stopped doing on all kinds of days and how I maintain my property and things. But I'm also, the vision of this comprehensive study isn't, I don't think, a great vision totally. And one of the issues with it I have, and I in fact heard it on the radio yesterday morning, contractors have nowhere to go, and builders aren't even getting bids from people because they're just disappearing. I don't know where everybody thinks these little businesses should go. You keep residential is great in the right spot. This particular little quarter-acre lot, not a spot to put a manufacturing complex by any sense of the word. But there's a 100-foot drop on one side. There's a 65-foot drop on the other. There's warehouses and industrial on 3 sides of it, which aren't likely to be changed in our lifetime. And I don't think it's really going to impact the quality of life in the area. Stores could bring a successful store could bring a lot of traffic. There's no sidewalks, there's no parking, not a place for stores. I'm looking to put up a nice looking little building where landscapers, plumbers, your local business, mom and pop business have a place to park. Or maybe we should ride around all these local towns and see how many commercial vehicles are parked in backyards. And if they get thrown out of their backyard, where do they go? Again today, I had somebody call me up. Has no place to go looking for rental space. So I'm not talking about a construction yard. I'm talking about just somebody, traffic, someone would come to the spot in the morning, park their car, take their van, go do their job. At the end of the day, park their van and go home in a building. In a building that could be, there's a architecture review board. I'm not talking about some crummy looking metal building. That property, you could make a building that looks like an office or in the front and put garages in the back if, the board and architects work together. So it would look nice. You could landscape the front and, it's not a 55-mile-an-hour zone. If people speed through there, well, that's a traffic problem. That's not a resident problem. I mean, it's a resident problem. It's not a local law problem. They have to enforce the law. Reduce the speed limit. Whatever you have to do. But it's just not a place that really is conducive to housing, my opinion. And these towns do need a place for businesses to go. And there's no place. And all these comprehensive studies, they're jamming housing down everybody's throat. Housing is great. We need housing, but we also need to maintain these houses. And where do these people go that are to maintain it? Where do they keep their equipment? Where do they keep all the town of Ossining? They don't even have outside storage. Where do they put their stuff? And then you build a big warehouse. Well, they can't have a big warehouse because where do you put it? In the warehouse, outside? I mean, so, part of the whole study is, everyone has to work together. And I've always tried to work with my neighbors, and I try to do what the right thing is. And this property is conducive. I've turned in professional studies from, architects, from real estate people, saying that that's what this property wants. You can't build a house. Who's going to buy it? Or, oh, sure, you could fence it in so you don't go over the hill. Then what do you live in a cage? Quarter acre. I mean, that's my opinion. I'm next door. There's buildings next to it, and I really think we need a little commercial space in Ossining that local people can use.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else before Ms. Black comes back up that would like to address the board?
Stephen Hampton, 2013 Quaker Ridge Road. What I'm not understanding from Bruce is he's so concerned about these people and parking their vehicles. He has a huge property down below the hill that is perfect for something like that. And you're trying to squeeze something onto what you said is a quarter-acre lot in a residential neighborhood. It makes no sense. If you really have concern for all these people that you want to park their trucks, build a garage down on your property down below. From when I look down over the hill, you have lots of land down there, don't you? Isn't there vacant land you could build on down there? So that's the proper place. You already
You
are
need to
commercial
address
down there.
just the board.
So it makes no sense to me. He wants to jam a garage into what is an existing residential neighborhood when he has plenty of space in a commercial area where he could build a garage and help those people he's so concerned about. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gabe Breakstone. I live at 30 Quaker Bridge Road. I drive down that road multiple times a day, and I always brace myself when I'm going through Crotonville because it's heavily residential. There's no sidewalks. People park as far away as possible try to get as close to the curb or to the side of the property as possible. And yet there are still people going out to get their mail, walking their dogs, getting their children in and out of cars, bicyclists, lots of activity on those roads all throughout the day. It's particularly frightening driving around what is a blind curve, which is where the Curtin property is. And I tend to drive below the speed limit. Anybody who drives with me knows wants me to go faster. But when I'm on that road, I particularly drive slower because I don't want to hurt anybody. And I can't imagine having trucks coming in and out of there as being a good choice. I don't know what should be put there, honestly, but not more vehicles. I think that's a mistake. And in fact, I went to the planning board's working session, whatever that was, I think 2 weeks ago. And I thought the two best arguments for not putting commercial property there were done by Bruce and the gentleman who has the Corvette place. The man with the Corvette place spoke about how people get turned around on Quaker Bridge and they end up turning around his driveway, and he talked about how some of the vehicles that he repairs get hit. That's a good reason not having any more traffic come up there. Then he also spoke about his own personal residence, which is on Pleasantville Road in Briarcliff, and how after building the CVS there was more traffic and that a car actually went into his residence and he had to move out of it. Another reason, another good argument for not putting a commercial property on our narrow little windy road. But then also when Bruce spoke about how he wants to protect his property, and we all understand that, I want to protect not only my property, my neighbor's property, my neighbor's children, their dogs, their lives, their car doors as they open them up, as traffic is going down. There's lots of reasons. And I don't think you have to be a resident to appreciate how, of that particular little stretch of road, to appreciate how having more traffic there, even if it's trucks coming in the morning and the evening, it doesn't make sense. And I also agree with Steve Hampton. Bruce has a very large piece of property down below. That's an ideal place to have trucks parked.
My name is Evelyn Garrett. I live at 45 Old Albany Post Road, 3 houses down from the property we're discussing today. I'd just like to know what Mr. Fiorito's plans are for these. Are there going to be multiple garages for each business, or is it going to be one big garage?
I don't think there are any plans yet because there's no final zoning, so I don't think he's developed any plans at this point. As far as we know, that's not something that we could take on tonight.
Big could it be on a quarter acre?
Any other comments? Again, before we repeat, is there anybody else who would like to address the board who has not already been up here?
Rivera, 16 Hillcrest Avenue.
I'm sorry, could you just say what? I didn't hear.
Olga Rivera, 16 Hillcrest Avenue. I'm not a big talker, so I probably won't take not even 3 minutes. But I just wanted to say that I moved from the city 25 years ago to Crotonville because I was trying to take my children and my family away from the noise, the traffic, and the danger. My children were able to go to school, walk down the road, and I had no worries about it. I'm retired now, my children are all grown and out of the house, but I see every morning the new parents, they have to drive the children down the road because they are afraid that when the bus comes to pick them up, they might get hurt. Bringing commercial traffic to Crotonville is going to be a tragedy, and I want to know who's going to be responsible for it. That's all I had to say.
Is there anybody else here to address the board who has not done so yet? Name is Black. Come on back up.
Mike is yours. Jamie Black, 35 Quaker Bridge Road. In terms of the situation with the property that Mr. Fiorito purchased, just submitting to the, I guess for the record, we did some homework on the property, identifying what the potential sale price of it was, looking at the cost of constructing a single-family home, a multifamily home, permits, plans, etc. And we think that with a single-family home constructed on that property, if it's done in a way that's tasteful, that Mr. Fiorito can more than make his money back. Additionally, call us victims of too many home improvement shows. There's nothing that suggests that the house that's currently on that property can't be renovated to actually allow it to stand again and function as it's functioned, I think at this point, probably for over 50 years. Rats can be removed. So I want to submit that. And then in terms of this idea, I think Mr. Hampton and Ms. Breakstone's suggestion of making such a serious commitment to being a good neighbor, finding a place for sort of your friends who have been complaining to you and requesting of you to move and create a garage facility down on his property. I think that's genius, because what we've encountered when we do have a lot of contractors in the area, we end up with all of the breakfast food stuff lathered down the street in the morning, and then we end up with all the beer bottles thrown down the street at night. And additionally, it's extremely dangerous on that curve.
Thank you. John, are there any other comments? I just want to take a minute to just clarify and just make sure that everybody is aware of the permitted uses in neighborhood commercial. So it's stores and shops for the conduct of any retail business, excluding drive-through establishments, personal service establishments, fully enclosed eating and drinking establishments, provided that no live entertainment or live music is supplied or dancing permitted, business, professional, and governmental offices, public utility structures which only serve the local area, fire and police stations, artist live workspaces, subject to many provisions. And that, continue. Mixed uses is defined in this chapter, subject to the following provisions. My time's up. My time's up.
That's it, you're done.
Yeah. Mixed uses is defined in this chapter. The lot on which the mixed use is proposed shall be at least 20,000 square feet in size. The lot on which the mixed use is proposed shall not be adjacent to or across the street from any lot on which exists the housing of dogs as a principal use. Minimum size of the respective dwelling units shall be studio and efficiency dwellings 450 square feet, one bedroom dwelling 675 square feet, two bedroom dwellings 750 square feet, three bedroom dwellings 1,000 square feet, four bedroom dwellings 1,200 square feet. Mixed use shall be permitted only in buildings which conform to the New York State Residential Code for the proposed mixed use. The residential and non-residential uses in a mixed use building shall have separate means of access. Non-residential and residential uses of the building shall each be provided with number of parking spaces required by 200-29A. General on-site landscaping and screening is deemed appropriate by the planning board. Dwelling units shall not be permitted above restaurants or any other use deemed by the planning board to be incompatible with residential use in the building. There shall be no outdoor storage associated with the residential use. Dwelling units shall not be permitted in basement or cellar space. One family detached dwellings not to exceed one dwelling on each lot permitted in and as regulated in the R5 residence district is also part of NC. Two family detached dwellings not to exceed two dwellings on each lot as regulated by the bulk requirements is also permitted in NC. Multiple dwellings and row or attached dwellings is defined in this chapter subject to the following requirements. The lot on which the dwellings are proposed shall be at least 15,000 square feet in size, and there shall be a minimum of 5,000 square feet of lot area per dwelling. Minimum size of the respective dwelling units shall be studio and efficiency dwellings 450 square feet, one bedroom dwelling 675, two bedroom dwellings 750, three bedroom dwellings 1,000, and four bedroom dwellings 1,200 square feet. This use shall be permitted only in buildings which conform to New York State Residential Code for proposed use. Landscaping dwelling minimum, okay, and I believe that is it. It's not in that space. It's not there. No. Is it? And just to be perfectly clear, there's a lot of residential in NC.
There may be a lot of residential in NC, but it's more than just that there's a lot of residential in NC. And so what I'm asking is, number one, looking at the scale of this property, that you're looking at, again, revising the master plan to go against what was the vision of professional urban planners of just 8, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. It was a vision that was a long-term vision that was established for that reason. And underscoring so much of what I'm hearing is we got to get more tax revenues for the schools. And again, we got the tail wagging the dog, so let's go ahead and shove some higher density over here in Crotonville. The town, what was it called? The town outside. There's not a single Crotonville resident, shame on Crotonville, but this shouldn't be a political discussion on the planning board or on the town board. Well, maybe on the planning board, yes, but not on the town board. And that's shame on the residents for not understanding that. Because I don't think our town board is looking at the big picture. They are not thinking about what this area is going to look like if these changes are made, what it's going to look like 10, 15 years from now. But what you can do is go to several other towns like Peekskill and see what some of the things have happened and the way they've happened in Peekskill, which, there's some good things, but there's a lot of huge problems that have evolved in Peekskill, even with all the urban renewal. And I'm really concerned that, you're setting up Crotonville and this part of the village of Ossining to be that sort of challenged model.
We don't actually have any jurisdiction over the village of Ossining. So
Excuse me. Your town of Ossining, excuse me, yes. But most of you live in the village of Ossining, is that correct?
Two of the members of the board live in the unincorporated part of the town.
Meaning the area that we're in?
Nobody lives in Crotonville.
Right.
Nobody lives in Crotonville.
Okay. All right.
But they do live in the unincorporated part of town, not in the village of Ossining.
All right. But nobody lives in Crotonville.
That is true.
All right. Okay. I also want to reiterate that one of your planning board's members who was here tonight went on record, and I heard it, and I just want to reiterate it.
You just can address the board.
Yes, I will. He reiterated that what was communicated to us tonight is not consistent with what he heard and understood. So I think there's, until any further endorsement or changes or decisions are made, that this be cleared up. I think this is a huge issue. I think it fundamentally speaks to, again, this major disconnect. And we got to solve that because we're supposed to be a unified town.
Thank you very much. Yes, we are planning to invite the planning board chair or representative to our work session, which we are hopeful to continue to discuss this at our next meeting. I think we're good. I think we're gonna.
Well,
right.
Just one more thing. I think the thing that's great is that the planning board work session was recorded. So I think it will be very easy to go back and basically watch the tape. Lastly, what I wanted to share was, while we're going through this planning process, I think that there needs to be a significant retrenching on what is actually permitted in GB1, what is actually permitted in NC. Because as I said, everybody's open to grandfathering their current use, but at the same time, what's permitted now is really too voluminous to actually allow for, quality of life in our community. And just look at the situation with, this ballroom. We could, in one of those Butler buildings, end up with the exact same problem. And the fact that she's there, she has a business, everybody's favorable toward it, and now the neighbors have a nightmare. That's exactly what our concern is. We have the exact same concern. We have the concern of if they build it, they will come. But the question is what happens? And once it's built, it cannot be unbuilt. So what we're saying is let's change it to residential. It was what was initially believed to be the best strategy for Crotonville. The planner, town planner, who we pay a lot of money to, came back to the table with the exact same recommendation. And I think when anybody watches the tape, we'll see that the planning board was recommending the exact same thing. So again, the fear factor about the schools, I opposed the development down the water in the village. I opposed the situation with the conversion of the Section 8 houses on Snowden. I opposed any additional construction on Highland, just for this reason. And you know what we were told when we opposed the development down on the water? We were told at most 5 school children will be heading into the school system. So the ills of the village should not become the sickness of Crotonville.
Okay. Can we close? I would like to say it again. Adjourn the public hearing. Thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing until May 23rd? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for your input, and we will continue to deliberate. All right. Madam Clerk, would you like to take
Yes,
over?
I would. We have a special
A little bit later? Sorry. Is Mr. Ritchie here? Yeah. Oh. Oh, I couldn't see him. Okay. Okay. So if everybody could just make your way into the hall, if you want to continue to converse, we encourage you to do so. But we have the rest of our regular meeting this evening, and we have a lot more to go. So next up is a special presentation from Mike Ritchie from Dolph Rotfeld Engineering about our MS4 stormwater report for 2016-17. Thank you so much for coming out and for being very patient, Mr. Ritchie. We appreciate it, and thank you for coming every year to work with us on this MS4. It is a very large undertaking, and we appreciate your guidance.
Thank you. Who knew stormwater could clear a room? Thank you very much for the opportunity to meet with you this evening and hopefully briefly review the submission under the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation requirement for you to report your activities in connection with implementation of the stormwater management program for the period of time from March 2016 until March of 2017. And on behalf of Rotfeld Engineering, we work with the staff to collect the information that's relevant to that implementation, minimum measures 1 through 6, create a draft report which has been provided to the clerk and to the office for you to review. A requirement of the stormwater legislation is that there be a presentation to the community at a meeting at which questions could be asked or comments could be made prior to the report being signed off by the supervisor, the appropriate authority, and delivered to the state DEC by June 1st of 2017. And in terms of background and general information, this is the last year of this current permit period that started. The initial permit was in 2003, so this is up to 2017, 14 years later. And that's the good news is it's the last period, the last report under this period. The bad news is there will be another report. The new requirements are being reviewed that have been drafted and been sent out for review, are under consideration by the state DEC right now. They would have been available and in effect as of March of 2017, except they got 1,000 comments in response to the new draft, and they've had to back up and consider those comments for revisions to the permit requirements. And now they're telling us that we will get the new permit requirements by the fall of 2017. And the current permits, the requirements of the current permit are extended until that new permit is delivered and put into effect. So that what we know of the new permit is that if anything, the requirements would be to some degree elevated. We don't know exactly what that is, but that's why they got such pushback on the comment during the review period, that requirements have been to some degree elevated, and your ability, municipalities generally have felt that their ability to implement them cost-wise, manpower-wise, and overall would be difficult, particularly given budget and revenue restrictions that the state has placed on the municipality. But that being said, the report for this year covers minimum measures 1 and 2, which deal with your outreach to the community, any volunteer activities that have been undertaken. In particular, the history of this minimum measures 1 and 2 has been more paper-oriented, brochures, kiosks, handouts, but with the advent of the websites for municipalities, a lot of communities, including the town, have worked to develop information available online, and the state recognizes that, and that very well may be more incorporated in the new permit, since we have limited contact with the public by them walking into offices much anymore. It's more likely to be generally useful to the community being online. So we work with Maddie, and this report, as well as previous year's reports, should be up on the website, interactive to the degree that you can even take some comments or be able to get feedback on what you're doing. All would be to your benefit to develop that as a resource for outreach and public participation. Of course, whatever volunteer groups or organizations could be could be enlisted to assist the schools, school children, PTAs, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, all in a number of communities have been helpful in getting information on water quality, stormwater quality, what do's and don'ts about household property maintenance issues, even conducting some public meetings, public information meetings that could be useful. Your report does cover what materials have been made available, to whom generally, in what amounts. It's mostly numerical, and in particular where people can contact the town supervisor's office, the clerk's office, for further information on the stormwater activity in the town, should they be interested in obtaining it. And
while you're still on that same point, I just want to highlight a couple of efforts that the town makes. We have utilized Green Ossining, which is a committee that serves outside of the town to offer information, and they do so at their table at Earth Day, which is a big event that they've sponsored. Green Ossining was actually, I think, a town committee that was started from the town back in maybe 2008, 2009. Also, we have our Village Fair and our Environmental Advisory Committee offers a lot of information to the public, and many people come through that day. Additionally, our highway department sends out an annual mailing, and there's much information that goes out to every resident in the unincorporated part of the town about stormwater and the impact that any actions that they take to their lawns or in their homes have on the stormwater. And also we have information, as you mentioned, in our office, as you mentioned, on our website, and I think there was one other place that I was thinking, and our building department also has information and shares information, and our parks department conducts a Love 'em and Leave 'em campaign through the park. So I just wanted to mention that those are some of the things that are included in this report, and we continue to do our best street sweeping and all of the things that contribute in keeping our storm drains clean, that contribute to the cleanliness of our stormwater and the communication to our public about how they can help.
Minimum control measure number 3, illicit discharge and detection, deals with the outfall mapping requirement that you have been active in a consortium with, making the town eligible for grant money. We have an RFP on the street now to continue the mapping. We've done outfalls, catch basins. The new maps will include the pipes, the size of the pipes, the type of pipes that connect the catch basins to the manholes in the outfalls, direction of flow, the land use that drains to any particular outfall, and the outfall mapping project is intended to provide you with a basis should there be an illicit discharge detected at an outfall. When you inspect the outfalls, you can easily trace back to where the material may have originated from, the offending material or the pollutant of concern. So the town has been very active in participating with up to 22 other municipalities in the county to obtain the state assistance to complete that mapping. You have an IDDE in illicit discharge detection and elimination legislation in your code. That's one of the things we hear, that in the new state requirements they will be asking you to review and possibly update, given some suggestions. And we As I mentioned, the consortium, we will be working with the consortium to try to keep the overhead down in terms of your meeting the new requirements. We'll look at what is needed to be done with your stormwater management plan, with your stormwater pollution prevention plan, all requirements previously that deal with both development and construction sites on private property and the maintenance of your facilities for your public property as well. Outfall inspection requirements are reported. Should there be an illicit discharge detected on an inspection or reported and investigated, it has to be remediated, investigated, and remediated, and then documented. If there's any activity in that regard at all, it is made available by the building officials, public works officials, and is reported in the annual report, as are, as the supervisor mentioned, the amount of street sweeping you do. Catch basin cleaning also has requirements to be met. Catch basins inspected and cleaned before discharge, before where water's collected, storm water's collected, before it's discharged to a water body in the United States. So if there were any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. But we have a very interactive group. We meet periodically to both update municipalities on the requirements, assist them in meeting them. Should the state want to audit the MS4 and their activity, we have assistance to provide in terms of documentation and just generally helping to see that both what's required can be done, but also at the most manageable cost.
Are there any questions from my board colleague? Richie. Just wanted to add two other additional events that we just had this weekend. We had a Stash the Trash town run by our recreation department, and we also had a river sweep we participated in for Engle Park, and I believe some of those activities were mentioned because we've been participating in those annually. So keeping the garbage out of our storm drains, as well as keeping the garbage and the invasive species out of our beach by the river is hopefully also working in that right direction.
Clean water.
Exactly.
Is environmentally positive for all living things. So.
Absolutely. We're very appreciative that you help us manage this process once again.
Thank you.
And
it's my pleasure to work with the town.
Go ahead.
We get a lot of cooperation.
No, I just wanted to say, without water, we can't survive. It's probably the single most important thing that we live with. So I appreciate all the effort of all the people who are involved in this process, that work on it, because everything that goes into our water affects us. So the fact that we do all these things for our catch basins and for education and for outreach, and that you assist us with all that is extremely important. And I, for one, I'm happy about it, because there's a commercial out there right now that's kind of a joke about this has the acceptable amount of lead in the water. I don't know if anybody's seen this commercial, and everybody kind of says, what do you mean? I'm not drinking that. So, yeah, if we want to keep those kinds of things out and chemicals, we have to work hard.
Well, I think there are indications that, at least to some degree, some progress is being made. The river keeper that we all, pay attention to, has given some positive encouragement for what they observe, being, a major player in observation of the environmental conditions
Right.
that are at the end of the pipe or at the very end. So that's encouraging to all of us.
I also think that mapping that you talked about is extremely important in order to be able to follow the systems, many of those systems and pipes which have been here for, I don't claim to know exact how long, but a very, very, very long time is probably essential to being able to follow, where and how water is delivered out from its source from one place to another, and then in terms of if there's anything particularly noxious that's introduced to it, being able to kind of follow it. That's so. Thank you.
That's the mapping is a particular interest of mine because having been involved in local government in a number of municipalities in the county for more years than I care to recall, for the most part, the only mapping available in any municipality going back even 10 or 15 years was a zoning map pinned on a wall, maybe with some pencil dots on it, where the catch basins were, no concern about the outfalls, or the manholes, or the connecting pipes, or where what the area was that contributed to the outfall, no consideration for that at all. So that's a catch-up, that's just catching up. The other thing is the public awareness. When you ask somebody who is delivering their recently deposited pet waste to a catch basin that they really shouldn't be doing that, well, they say, why? Where does that go? There's really a lack of both official recognition of stormwater as well as just general residential knowledge. So it's an educational program basically with some caveats, but overall, hopefully it'll have a positive effect on the result we'd all, I think is worthwhile.
And I think some of our zoning changes and the more permeable pavement and things that we're doing to make sure more water is absorbed where it falls and not running into our systems will make a big positive difference. So now we got to work on the barges.
Yeah. Well, and construction sites now, the SWIP, the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan that I referred to, is a requirement of a site plan being developed today. You have to demonstrate where that stormwater is going and how it's treated, and that it retains, that no sediment, soil sediment leaves the site. So it's all part of a big package.
Thank you
from
so very
start to
much.
finish.
Very much appreciated.
Okay.
Have a great night.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
My pleasure.
We'll move on to announcements.
Yes. All right, so we have so much excitement in our community right now as the weather gets warmer and the days get longer. We're getting there. One important announcement I want to make up front is that we received word from the New York State, this is what it's leading into, Department of Environmental Protection, that next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, May 16th, 17th, and 18th, new valves on the Croton Dam, which affect the Croton River, will be tested. And they are strongly recommending that folks do not enter the river for any purpose. So even if it does get warm, because it might, we will be we don't advise anybody using the river on those days. We will be posting the notice with more details on the Town of Ossining website. Also, the DEP will be posting signage at various access points, including Gerlach Park, Old Albany Post Road, the Crossing Bridge, etc. And they will also be posting it on Facebook. But for your safety and the safety of our first responders, please take heed of this request and keep your distance from the Croton River next week. For activities such as wade fishing, kayaking, or anything else that would negatively impact the safety of those in the river. because what can happen is when they test the valves, you can get fluctuations, very quick fluctuations in water level when you're not expecting it. So please stay out of the river. And we're also going to get information to the Ossining Boat and Canoe Club. We asked them to post there as well, Shadamock. We also received notice this week that 2 of the zero emission vehicle rebates we applied for have been secured. This is over $20,000 in funding, which will contribute to the lease agreement of the Nissan Leaf, which we do have now in our possession, and the purchase and installation of a charging station at Cedar Lane Park. We're still waiting to hear about the other charging stations, but we did hear positively about those 2. And this will hopefully help to contribute greatly to reducing the greenhouse gas emissions in our community. We're hoping to encourage people to be thoughtful about purchasing electric vehicles. The Nissan Leaf arrived last week, and it's smooth and quiet, and it gets a range of about 100 miles on one charge. Our building inspector, John Hamilton, will soon be driving this car around town, and we can't wait to get it officially in commission. Thank you to Ron Kamen with Sustainable Westchester for helping us add a clean vehicle to our fleet and at a great price. We have several events coming up this week that I want to be sure to share with you. This weekend marks the kickoff of the 2nd year of the town's Mind, Body, Spirit Ossining program. In an effort to foster economic development and encourage residents to utilize our parks and be healthy, the town began offering free classes hosted by local fitness and wellness experts on the weekends. This program was well received, and we're happy to offer classes for everyone in the community again this season. Friday afternoon, May 12th, the AmeriCorps members at Open Door Family Wellness Center will hold a demonstration of their Recess Rocks program for kids at Nelson Park after school from 3 to 4:30. Come and shake, rattle, and roll with this fun, dynamic movement program for elementary school children. On Saturday, kick off Mother's Day weekend with a workout designed for moms and caregivers with Enrique Rosario of ICU Fit Training at Lewis Engel Park at 9:30 a.m. No experience is necessary to try out Enrique's signature 30-minute workout. Just bring water. Don't miss the first of many classes to come this summer, and follow the town's Facebook page or visit the town's website for more details about Mind, Body, Spirit Ossining 2017. Beginning on Friday night, May 12th, T-Town will host their annual Plant Fest. Friday night's the first pick event, where a $20 admission fee will allow you to access the widest variety of flowering shrubs, herbs, vegetables, and more, along with small bites from River Market Kitchen, local beers and wine. First pick begins at 4 p.m. and goes until 7. The fun continues on Saturday, where admission is free, and Plant Fest will begin at 9 a.m. Also on Saturday, May 13th, Westchester County will hold their Earth Day shredding event at the Kensico Dam Plaza in Valhalla between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. If you have uncovered any old documents during spring cleaning that you no longer need, come down and visit the mobile shredder in a new location. Later that day, the Ossining Elks Lodge will host a second Saturday Jazz. This week, they're featuring the Paul Collins Organ Trio. The show begins at 7:30 p.m., and all proceeds benefit the band. Next Thursday, May 18th, the Ossining Public Library's Boudars Theater will host the Ossining Documentary and Discussion Series screening of The Hunting Ground, a look into the disturbing trend of rape on college campuses throughout the U.S. The event will be followed by a panel discussion. The screening begins at 6:30 p.m. Be sure not to miss this important and educational event. And tomorrow at 9 o'clock, I believe, is Senior Law Day. Senior Law Day, thank you, I forgot what it was called. And I will be there to greet people, and I think there's a lot to learn, so please consider coming to the library at 9 a.m. tomorrow for some light breakfast, and then some good speakers to talk about a number of different issues that relate to seniors and how they can be more educated about options available to them. Finally, if you had not yet signed up for Relay for Life's Ossining event, you still have time. This year's event will take place at Ann M. Dorner Middle School on Saturday, June 24th from 12 p.m. to midnight. You can join a team through the American Cancer Society's website at relay.acsevents.org. Be sure to enter 10562 as your zip code. And I think we had mentioned before that the town is also participating in the GeoStrong team to help raise awareness and raise money for this important organization. Are there any other announcements from any of my colleagues? I know that there was
Just
one other
remind
event.
me not to have my children watch that section of the the document series. I might get questions.
Oh,
on
documentary discussion.
The documentary
Of
series.
this meeting.
Huh?
I thought you meant of this meeting.
No, 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 no. Just
Plant sale? Plant sale? Yeah. Yep, that is that. And it starts at 9 a.m. on Saturday. Yep, going to the Saturday one. There is one other event, which is Friday night at St. Anne's. There's the Turn Up the Heat fundraiser for a boiler local talent show. Peruvian folklore and soul project will be performing. I believe that's this Friday. Just found that. Okay.
And Happy Mother's Day.
And end of the meeting, but I will absolutely say Happy Mother's Day to everybody. And are there any other announcements? You said no. And then liaison reports.
Yep.
All right.
So I attended the Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting last night. And the Parks and Rec Advisory had, they deliberated regarding some questions that we as a town board had posed to them with respect to a couple of things. Number one was Cedar Lane Park, the basketball courts, which are next to the community garden, are in major disrepair. The hoops are run down, and adjacent or perpendicular, but over from that is a volleyball court, which I never knew existed, and I'm in that park all the time, but it's far back. There was conversation with respect to many of those concepts. What is utilized? What is it being utilized as? Their recommendation, because of the severity of the disrepair of the basketball court, is that it should be ripped up and that grass or some such thing should be put in that spot. Honestly, what they're seeing is not usage there are a few of them who kind of knew or have seen, and they're saying that they're not being used at basketball courts. That's not what's been used. There's a lot of usage as soccer in that area, and so ripping up that basketball court and putting grass might be more conducive. Also, for the area, they believe that the volleyball court is in good shape. And so the recommendation for the volleyball court is to do the poles that are on either side where the nets are put have heaved, evidently, and so they believe that we should do the repairs that would be minimal to fix the heave and any minor cracks that are possibly happening. That is their initial suggestion at this time. And then they believe that there should be a little bit more oversight as to watching what kind of usage that volleyball court gets. And depending upon that, maybe there might be further conversation. The other thing that we asked them to take up was the request by the people who utilize the dog park in Cedar Lane for lights. The Parks and Rec Advisory Board recommends that if lights can be put in there if the town has the ability economically, which is our purview, to put in minimal lights. There was a concern about what kind of lights, they were not for stadium lighting, or so I guess there was some conversation about what type of lights. But having said that, they were in favor of some type of lights for only evening time, because the parks are not open early in the morning. So they believe that it should be up to 9 o'clock because that is the closing time as needed, right? Because so in the summer, you're not going to have to light it probably only from 8 to 9 because it's light later. Whereas in the winter, you would probably have to start at 4:30 and go to 9. That is their recommendation, that if we can do it, if there's the ability to do it, and and that depending upon the lighting, that it's not too much, I guess. So that's that. And then just in general, they're redoing the gym floor, and they hope that that's going to be done by, I think, barring some things within the next 2 weeks. I think they believe that that's going to be done. So that's going to be awesome. It's going to be new and pretty and great. Camps are starting in terms of scheduling, in terms of signing up. So if you want to do that and you haven't done that, you should go out and do that. And I think that's it.
You still sign up online, or do you have to go in person?
No, at this point you cannot sign up online. I think you have to go in person to do that.
Recreation.
To the recreation, the community center.
95 Broadway. Thank you. Any other liaison reports? No? All right. We have no departmental reports this evening, so we can skip that. And seeing there's nobody in the public to comment on any of the agenda items, why don't we go into our board resolutions, Madam Clerk?
Okay, resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining hereby approves the April 25th, 2017 minutes of the regular meeting as presented.
We have a motion?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Resolved the town board of the town of Ossining hereby approves the May 2nd, 2017 minutes of the regular meeting as presented.
We have a motion? Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Resolved the town board of the town of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated May 9th, 2017, in the amount of $422,596.09.
We have a motion.
Second.
Maddie, do you want to just highlight some of the
Yes.
items?
Yes, good evening.
evening.
There are a couple pretty large bills, which we have not seen in quite a while, as you may recall in this voucher detail report. Probably the most exciting of which is the final payment for the revaluation to Tyler Technologies in the amount of just shy of $126,000. So that's obviously a substantial amount of the voucher detail, but it's also a good end to a very long process. We also have half of the audit bill for the 2016 finances, which is also significant. And then something that's going to be coming up a little bit later in the agenda, a bill for the 2016 foreclosure work that was completed through the tax receiver's office by the office of Mr. Mark Tulis, which is also on here. And that's a contract that the town board had authorized in, I believe it was April of 2016. Because of some complications, the work actually just got finished last month, and they didn't do incremental billing. So that's why we're seeing that now.
Questions? Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Thank you.
Resolved the town board hereby appoints Aaron Norris Ossining to fill the remainder of an unexpired term on the town's Environmental Advisory Committee, set to expire on December 31st, 2019.
Do we have a motion? So as many of you may know, we have had a vacancy on our Environmental Advisory Committee for some time now, and we heard from Aaron Norris the last time we solicited applications. Aaron joined the EAC at their last meeting to get a taste of the work they've been doing, and according to Chairwoman Mitzi Elks, she fit right in. We've already seen feedback from her on some emails looking for suggestions for some grant funding that we have coming up. We're glad to welcome Aaron to this important town committee. Any other discussion?
Yes, I'm very glad to welcome her. Erin's a friend of mine. I didn't know that she was appointed, but she's a scientist. So she's going to really add to these kinds of things. It's very, very good.
We have a lot of scientists actually on the EAC and a lot of chemists.
That's where they should, and we have a lot of architects on the planning board, and I think that's exactly how these advisory committees are supposed to be. I'm happy to have those type of expertise on those kinds of boards because they understand it, So
all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention?
Whereas the town board of the town of Ossining has been considering the adoption of a proposed local law entitled Amendment to Extend Interim Development Moratorium within the unincorporated town of Ossining, which means to impose a temporary moratorium on development within the town of Ossining to allow for a planning and zoning analysis consistent with the town's comprehensive plan. And whereas in accordance with the New York State law, and after having provided all requisite notice thereunder, the town board conducted a public hearing on introductory local law number 5, 2017, entitled Amendment to Extend Interim Development Moratorium within the unincorporated town of Ossining on May 5th, 2017 at 7:40 p.m. at 16 Croton Avenue, Ossining, New York, during which the public had the opportunity to be heard on such proposed local law. And whereas the proposed local law is a type 2 action, does not require environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining hereby adopts local law number 4, 2017, entitled Amendment to Extend Interim Development Moratorium within the unincorporated town of Ossining, with such adoption to take effect as set forth in said local law and as otherwise required by law. And be it further resolved that the town board directs said local law number 4 of 2017 to be filed and or distributed in accordance with applicable law.
I have a motion?
Second.
All right, I don't think.
Excuse me, Madam Supervisor, there's actually 2 amendments that need to be made to that. So in the second whereas, the public hearing was actually held tonight, so that should read May 9th, 2017. And then the address should be replaced, right now it's at 16 Croton Avenue, it should be replaced with 8688 Spring Street.
Have a motion as amended.
So moved.
A second? As amended, okay? And all those in favor?
Aye.
This is a roll call vote.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Councilperson Torrey? Aye. Councilperson Jeffrey?
Aye.
Councilperson Wilshire?
Aye.
Councilperson Feldman?
Aye.
And Supervisor Levenberg?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining hereby appoints Umberto Fiera Ossining to a seasonal position of laborer at Dale Cemetery effective May 10th, 2017 at a rate of $12 per hour.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
So each year we hire a seasonal employee for the busiest season at Dale Cemetery, and Mr. Ferreira came highly recommended. Is that his name right? Ferreira, okay, just want to make sure. Came highly recommended by a past employee. We look forward to having him join the town team for the next 4 months. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention?
Resolved the town board of the town of Ossining hereby appoints Mark Toulis, Esquire of Toulis, Wilkes, Huff, and Geiger, LLP, 220 White Plains Road, 2nd floor, Tarrytown, New York, as special counsel to conduct in-rem foreclosure proceedings upon the unpaid tax liens appearing in the 2016 list of delinquent taxes, and to file the 2017 list of delinquent taxes. Compensation to Mr. Toulis shall be in accordance with his letter to the town of Ossining dated April 7th, 2017.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
So the next 2 resolutions pertain to our annual foreclosure proceedings. These are the same 2 firms that have been working with our tax office for many years with great success, and we look forward to continuing to do business with Mr. Toulis and Ms. Goldsand. Question? Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Resolved the town board of the town of Ossining hereby authorizes Robin Goldsand of RG Agency to perform the title and lien searches required in connection with the 2016 list of delinquent taxes in preparation for in-run foreclosure proceedings at a set fee of $200 per parcel, and to prepare documents for the closing of properties that have been auctioned.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? So the next resolution, before you read the entire resolution, I think that we've already decided that we're going to table it. So perhaps you could just read the title of the resolution, since we're not going to get through the whole thing. Is that okay, council? We need to read the whole thing? Do you recommend?
There's no reason to read it because you're not gonna take action on it, so if you just wanna note for the record what it is, that's.
Okay, so just perhaps the title, which is the resolution granting temporary cabaret license extension to Ballroom Studio of Westchester. We are tabling this resolution. Do I have a motion to table resolution I?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention?
I abstain.
We have no correspondence to be received and filed, however, we do have monthly reports. Resolved, the town board of the town of Ossining hereby accepts the following monthly reports. Town Building Department, April 2017. Town Clerk's Office, April 2017. Town Supervisor's Office, April 2017. Dale Cemetery, March 2017 and April 2017. And Tax Receiver's Office, April 2017.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Visitor recognition, we have no visitors left. I did want to mention that I think I left out one tiny announcement. I didn't want to forget it because it is an important one, which is on May 21st, and you may have seen signs up about this. The Clearview School will hold their annual 5K run walk on the Old Croton Aqueduct to raise money for the children and families of the Clearview School. The race kicks off from the community center at 7:45 a.m., so be sure to register in advance at www.clearviewschool5k.com or call 941-4653 for more information. And may I have a motion to adjourn into executive session for advice of counsel and personnel?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Before I want to close, I do want to wish every mom, a surrogate mom, aunt, grandma, and all the rest out there, along with our moms on the board, a very happy Mother's Day this weekend. So to all you moms, you all are. Thank you. We're hoping for a beautiful day to celebrate the ones who hold our families together and our town. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you on Tuesday, May 16th at 16 Croton Avenue for our next town board work session. Have a great night.